Totally. The definition of worthiness is the quality of being good enough.
Yeah.
And so we all have these I'm not blank enough stories. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not successful enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not capable enough. I'm not committed enough. Fill in the blank, right? And so that's like a lot of my workshops and a lot of my speaking events. It's always something that I talk about is what is your unworthiness story that has shaped your life in ways that you never even realized.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all do it. We all compare ourselves to somebody else in some way or another, and we tell ourselves we're not good enough. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Powerful.
So it is. It's really powerful. And understanding that, because that's the thing is like, so we have our unworthiness story. Well, we're also going to have the I am good enough. I am smart enough. I am capable enough. And it's then finding that bridge, right, between the two. Because we're not going to go from one to the other. You're not going to go from -3 to +3 without passing through 0. So then that journey is that spectrum of the unworthiness to the worthiness, and knowing that it's going to be like like when on your speed in your car, right? It's going to go back and forth and up and down.
Speedometer. Yes.
Yes. There you go. Thank you. That's like, called again.
Yes, listeners, she's making the hand motion. I knew what she was saying.
Yes. Yep.
That's a very good point, that you don't go from all the way negative to all the way positive without going through 0. So it's a process. Absolutely. And every time we're trying to do something new or learn something new or change a way that we think about something, it takes time, and it's a process for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
So let's focus on midlife. Now, I do not know your age, but I know I'm older than you. I can tell. So thank you for coming here today to talk to us about midlife, because I know you've certainly worked with lots of clients in this age range. And you and I talked in the past about how there's a lot of stuff going on in this period of time that can be a challenge for us feeling good enough, or feeling, what is the word feeling like even we deserve to take up space and we're not disappearing, is something I hear a lot. So tell us what are some of the things you've heard a lot from people that are challenges during midlife related to this worthiness that we're talking about?
Yeah. People not knowing where their value is. If they are no longer needed, right, by their kids in the same way that they did when they were little, right? And then where is their value? If they're no longer needed in the home the same way, where is their value? If they are no longer needed or even feel like they're wanted in the workplace and workforce, right? Where is their value? And when your relationship changes and you've been together for an extended period of time and you no longer have kids to fall back on and that identity, then where do you find your value and your worth? And it is interesting. It's like I'm in my mid-30s. And yet, like I said, like I've always had this attraction both ways to women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, right? So I've grown up really hearing this. I feel like I'm invisible. I feel like I'm disappearing. I feel like I don't matter. Who am I? If I don't have my kids and my husband and my work needing me, then do I even exist?
Right.
And so these are all things, and I think, as women, and this is all ageism too, and ageism is a really big part of my work and talking about it. It's something I've been passionate about. It goes both ways of, as a woman, you are either too young to ever know anything, or you are too old to be valuable.
Ooh. I hear you. It hurts a little bit to hear that, but yes, it's true. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's ageism. And so we need to have the conversation, because neither one of those things are true.
Yeah.
Right? Neither one of those things are true, and yet it goes both ways. And so as women, how can we come together to make sure that we can begin fighting against that and begin addressing what happens in midlife, what happens in the third act after midlife, right? And then how can we talk to younger generations and help them see as women that they are more than being a mother, they're more than being a wife, they're more than their income and achievements, right? And begin helping them see that their worth is not in any of those identities.
Right.
So I think like that's where to talk.
Yeah. I mean, everything you're saying I identify with for sure. And I know that there are listeners who, maybe you don't have kids or you're not married or, one and not the other or whatever. At the same time, my story is that I had two kids in my late 20s, early 30s. They're out of the house now, either in school or even more out of the house. I've been married that whole time. And I've seen so many people whose kids were growing up along with my kids put their whole lives, their whole selves into their kids, which is what you're describing, creating almost this situation where when their kids did well, that was them doing well. And it's such a temptation because let's say your kids get in trouble. Well, now you feel bad. Oh no, I'm a bad mom or bad parent. My kid got in trouble. Well, that's not true either. But I think it's so many years of identifying in this way that after that long period of time, you do maybe feel like you lost, like, who the heck am I if I take that away? It's it's such a huge thing. I feel like so many people must be nodding as I'm saying this, because if it's been the center of your life for 18 years and it goes away, obviously not literally totally, but in practice, then you feel empty, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, I mean, and to talk to also like whether, yeah, you've had kids or are married or you don't, and maybe it's a career, right? And
Mm-hmm.
maybe it is your body. Maybe you've been having an
Yes.
ability in your body in a certain way that is no longer there. And that is world shifting for somebody.
Yeah.
And so I want to look at it. And so wherever you are and wherever you are that in listening in, I want you to see yourself in this because it is so comfortable and it is a default and which is what are taught and it's easy to put our value outside of ourselves or to feel needed or to say like, I can have confidence because of this thing or I am worthy because of this thing. So then when that thing is taken away, which everything in life is temporary,
Yes.
everything in life is temporary. So at some point, this identity that you are living with and identifying with is going to change, is going to shift, and that's okay, right? That's okay. And then it's being able to have grace for yourself of saying, well, of course this is hard. It's been 18
Mm.
years, right? And so I want everyone, like my biggest thing that I think I coach on first and foremost is this idea of self-compassion and self-validation. If
Yeah.
you're going through this, of course, this is really, really hard. I have lived my life for X amount of years knowing and having confidence and feeling so important in this way or so trusting in my ability that this is painful and that's okay. And let
Mm.
yourself feel that, right? Because you being enough is not, and your worth is not based on how you feel. It's not based on any identity. It's not based on any achievement, right? It is inherent. But it doesn't mean that you feel good all the time.
I'm absorbing that. Yeah. And and this probably depends on each person's personality, but a lot of us want to feel good all the time, right? Like
Absolutely.
feeling bad, not bad, feeling uncomfortable emotions is not fun. We don't want to do that.
We're not taught to.
Yeah.
In our culture, it's like avoid pain at all costs, avoid discomfort at all costs, right? Unless it's like working towards something and like achieving something. And then that martyrdom is worn like a badge of honor.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's like, but really like, and I've been really in this in the past, I would say like 2 years. I was like toxic positivity. No anger, no disappointment, no pessimism or anything that someone would view as negative was allowed in my house ever. It was like I was
Mm-hmm.
always silver lining, be grateful, on to the positivity. This is for a reason. But as I did it, right, we all, and many of us do in our culture, we ultimately what you're saying is if I feel a certain way, right, I can't because I'm not good enough, right? It's not good to feel this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't,
Yeah.
I'm not worthy if I'm angry, which is like a
Yeah.
lot for women, right? I'm not worthy if I'm loud, or I'm not worthy if I'm too much. I'm not worthy. And so then this piece, and the most essential piece, is realizing like you're worthy and enough in any emotion. And so as you're in grief and in sorrow, and as you're going through these transitions to kind of bring it back where you are, is like sitting in it and letting know that you are enough and you're allowed to feel however you are feeling as you grieve this identity.
And is it also maybe that emotion is totally valid and it's not bad and it's not wrong and it's fine, right? Like it's not bad to feel that way if you miss your kids or your running marathon body or whatever it is, right?
Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing is like self compassion and validating yourself is one of the first steps, right? That actually allows you to feel into the emotion because of course you're going to miss your little kids. Of course you're, well, I mean, I like that's what I would think. And for those of you who are like, I don't miss those years at all, guess what? That's okay too. There is no wrong. You are not wrong in anything that you feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just not a message that we get very often, I don't think. I think that's really powerful. So we've talked about the things that might be coming up in midlife. Well, not might be, are, like certainly they are for lots of us. So you kind of said the first step is self-compassion, but talk us through if I'm listening to this and I'm sitting here thinking, well, that's all well and good that you're saying that I am enough, but I don't feel like I'm enough. Like, what can I do? What do I do to change that?
Yeah. Well, first, and this is like self validation, combined two words there self compassion and validation. And
Yes.
what I mean by validation, right, is like validating your emotions, validating your thoughts, right? So, two of my favorite phrases, and I'm going to encourage everyone to finish these sentences, write these down, and write them down as many times as you possibly can until you begin feeling a shift in your state of being, right? You feel the shift inside.
Mm.
And one of them is, of course, I'm feeling this way because.
Ooh,
And the other one is, it makes total sense that I'm feeling this way because.
I love those.
And you write them down, and of course, I don't feel good enough. I've never felt good enough. And this is really hard. Of course, I don't feel good enough. Everything in society is telling me that I'm not. It makes total sense that I'm feeling this way. This is the hardest journey I am ever going to go on. Right. And so
Mm.
you just keep saying it again and again and again. And in that validation, all of a sudden, you are no longer wrong for how you feel or what you're thinking because you don't need to be afraid of anything
Yeah.
that you are thinking or feeling. All of it is allowed.
So let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Yeah.
And what if someone is thinking, well, doesn't that kind of create this situation where I'm really dwelling on this? Like, of course, I don't feel good because, X, Y, and Z. And I just kind of sit there and I dwell. Isn't that not a good thing? What if someone is thinking that?
That can be. But I'm guessing that if you're here, it's because you don't want to dwell anymore.
Good point.
Right. And there's also this point, right? We all have our own process and we all have our own journey and we are all unfolding in our own time. And some people need to dwell to hit that point where they say
Hmm.
that I'm done dwelling. And if you've like suppressed and repressed emotions for a long period in your life, you may need time to dwell and to process, because a lot of times we are processing through so much stuff that we're not going to get over it in a day or a week, right? Or maybe a month, or maybe even in a year.
Yeah.
But, and I don't use but all the time, but you are processing, and you will get to the point where you're like, you know what? I'm sick of hearing myself talk about this. I'm sick of it. And at that point, you know, it's like, okay, I'm ready to do something different. But I'm going to share like this idea with you is, what if you can trust yourself? No matter how long it takes, no matter how painful it is, what if you can trust yourself that you will know the time to say, okay, I feel complete in that emotion. Now it's time to start doing something different, right? So if you are a dweller, that's what I'm going to offer you. Second part is, if you're here, I don't think that you are wanting to dwell anymore.
Good point.
And so, yeah. And so I think you know what it's like to invalidate yourself, and you know what it's like to blame yourself and wrong yourself, however you're feeling. So what if you just decided to try this idea that self-compassion and validation might be something different?
Yeah. I love that. And I will have those sentences written down, because here I am in this period of life. Like these are real things for sure.
Yeah.
So many things coming our way that we have feelings about. I mean, in any period of life, let's be honest.
Totally.
Okay. So once we are feeling that, because I understand what you mean, you're going to hit a point where you're going to say, okay, I got it. Like, I got it. I understand that this is okay to feel this way. And like, I'm kind of antsy, ready to kind of do something else or move forward. So then what does that look like?
Yeah. So I would say, now this is not like a hard and fast rule, right? But this is like kind of my process that I take myself through on a daily basis. I've been super diligent about this. I would say for the past, for sure the past few months, and it has been really noticeable in my life. So first, it's like being honest with how I'm feeling, having self-compassion, and validating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it is also like, what do I need to hear today? What do I need to hear? What do I wish someone would tell me? And that's, I think, yeah. And so like what I wish someone else would tell me, and they're not always the same, right? What people tell you and what you want to hear are not always the same. And so I would say, because that's truly like your intuition and your inner knowing what you need to hear in that moment. A lot of time it's inner child work. And so it's like, what is that wounded part of you, the one that desperately wants to feel good enough, the one that wants to be given permission, the one that just wants to say, hey, everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like write that down, answer that question. And then also like, what do you want to believe about yourself? You might not be there yet, but what are you willing to begin trying on? What do you want to believe? What do you want to work towards? What are you ready to start saying? And then looking for evidence of how that is true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because we spend a lot of time looking for evidence that we can't do or aren't able to or aren't good enough to do something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the thinnest sheet of paper has two sides. You always will find evidence of both. So where do you want to look for it? And sometimes it's so much easier to find the negative because we've been doing that for so long. And that's what we've watched everyone else in our life do. That's what we have permission to find. Right? But just because something is easy or has always been done doesn't make it the right thing to do.
Certainly true. Certainly true. I like this process. And when you said, what do I wish somebody would say to me, or you said something like that, I'm paraphrasing. that was impactful because obviously we all have different personalities. Some of us want a lot of external validation. And if you're that type of person, which I am somewhat, you said that and I went, "Oh, I could figure that out. I could figure out what I wish people would say to me." And then I could maybe go on to the next step and say, "Okay, what do I want to believe about myself?" It really like jogged me to think about that.
Yeah. Well, then it's also like if you know that you're someone who looks to the external validation, right? And you're like, oh man, but I want to do less of that.
Mm.
Then it's okay, what do I wish someone else would tell me? And how can I begin offering this to myself now?
Ah, I
Right? Like,
like
how
that.
can I provide that to myself? How can I provide this need?
Yeah.
And I think, I'm guessing that especially when you have kids that leave the house, right? That like there are you don't have that external validation from those people that you love
Right.
more than anything else in the whole world. You are
Right.
not getting the same feedback
True.
that you used to. And so then how do you create, and you can't replace that. You will never replace that love.
No.
But how can you begin finding a different love inside of yourself that can complement and be fulfilling in a different way?
Yeah. And that feels like a really hard question, but I like what you're saying of think this through every day. Think this through every day, see what you come up with. And that's kind of the journey towards figuring it out,
Yeah.
right?
I will never, ever say that this is an easy journey. Ever. This is the hardest one anyone will ever go on because it is the most confronting one. But it is the most worthwhile, fulfilling, and life changing one ever. And so the questions I ask, they directly impact my life and like my client's life on a daily basis, but they are not easy, my friend. They're not easy. Yeah. Yeah. These are ones to sit with and let yourself sit with them. There's no rush to answer these either. There's no rush. Let yourself
Mm,
sit with them. Because guess what? You answering these questions or not answering these questions again doesn't change your worth.
also a good point. Yep. And there's no wrong, right? We're not going to get it wrong or do
No,
it wrong.
no,
Yeah.
there's no such thing. I'm writing a book right now, and like one of the main ideas that I want to like end the book with is it's like, and guess what? If you do nothing with any of these ideas in this book, you're still enough and you're still worthy. It doesn't,
Uh,
it's just how do you want to feel in your life? And what do you want to create? And what do you want to experience? That's the only thing that matters.
yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes what midlife is a period where we're not really remembering how we want to feel because we haven't been focused on ourselves for a while and a lot of stuff has changed.
Totally.
Yeah. How can people connect with you and what might they be interested in working with you on potentially?
Yeah. So the best way, I think there'd be two ways. So I have a really awesome email list that I'm super proud of. And you can join either through my social media. So on Instagram, Jillie Johnston Coaching, or my website, jilliejohnston.com. I write from my heart multiple times a week. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of. I also please follow me on Instagram at Jillie Johnston Coaching, and then I also have my podcast, The Worthiness Mindset, and
Yes.
hopefully, maybe by the time this comes out, there might be some different things in the pipeline. But if you listen to my podcast, you'll find out about it. And yeah, and so how to work with me? I work with people one-on-one. I do small groups. I have a membership called Doing It Scared. It's my low-cost offer, and I want as many women, brave women, up to big things, whatever big means to you in your life, to come together and like be in the arena together and cheer each other on. And we're all in there doing it scared.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's super. We have book writing, we have podcast starting, we have business starting, we have new moms, we have newly empty nested moms, we have people who are getting back out in their career, starting to date again, leaving relationships, starting relationships, like so many different things. And it's super fun. And then I also help women go from idea for a business to reality in 3 months. And that's called Brave and Unreasonable Life in Business. So those are the different ways that you can work with me.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So let me just before I ask you the last question, let me just recap just to make sure that we got it. So you went through a process that can be kind of a daily practice for us to identify. I'm trying to see how would I simplify this. Maybe you should simplify it, but to identify kind of what's the feeling going on in us and validate that. And then ask ourselves, what would we want someone to say to us? What would we want to hear? And how can we start to believe that? Do I have that put together correctly?
Yeah. Start with letting yourself get out whatever you need to get out, right? Don't be afraid of anything. There's nothing to be afraid of, right? Get it all out. It makes total sense. I feel this way because, of course, yes. I'm feeling this way because, right? Validate, right? What do you need to hear today? And what do you wish someone would tell you? Combine those, keep those separate, right? And then what do you want to believe about yourself? What are you ready to start saying to yourself? And then find evidence of how that's true.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And on the side, the even more fun part, making a list of really awesome, fun things that you want to do or would love to or light you up, right?
Yeah. Wouldn't it be fun if, and just let yourself go. It can be as short or long of a list as you want. And it never has to stop.
Yeah. I love a running list. I'm definitely doing that.
Yay.